All right, livestock are 70% water. You can't overdo it. Remember this, water does not harvest solar energy. Fence does. So if you're limited on funds, spend your money on fence first. Yes, you got to have water, but Ian says people overdo it. They've got 4 legs, they can walk. Okay? So if you don't have a lot of money, get that fence in where you can control them. You've got to control the animals. Okay? And then when you start getting some more money, maybe you can reticulate some water out across your property. Okay? Go ahead. Gravity I like the best. That's what Dan had. Dan had a dugout up the field up here. He just took a 1-inch line and ran it underneath his fence, the full length of that farm. And he had plug-ins on 200-gallon tanks. He had 170 pairs out there, and that tank was full. There was a lot of cows, but you know what? Those cows didn't have to walk too far. So the farthest they had to walk was probably a 1/4 mile. The further you make animals walk to water, the bigger tank you need. Why is that? They all come at once. Yep. Yep. All right, go on to the next picture. This is a cool, we were on this ranch in Chihuahua, Mexico. This is a Mexican rancher, 60,000 acres. He guttered a mountain. Yep. He took a bunch of Mexicans with picks, rock picks, and started at the top and built a gutter out of rock and dirt all the way around that mountain. And the last 150 feet, he took it to a copper gutter. Look what he guttered it into. Check this out. Next picture. He's got a 1-million-gallon tank, concrete, and just, it looks like a giant tin bin. And in Mexico, you got to cover it, otherwise you'll lose all your water to evaporation. I asked him, I said, how many inches of rain did you have to get to fill that up? He said, 1 inch. 1 inch. They only get 4 inches a year. That's the Chihuahuan desert. He had so much pressure, because it's up in the mountains, when he brought it down to his farm, he had to put in pressure reducers. But yeah, they think outside the box there in Mexico. Go ahead. I love gravity. You don't need a pump. The pond water comes out of the sky. You don't have to buy the water. But you do need to protect your ponds. Go on. So this is a pond that didn't have a tank on it. It didn't have a pipe. And limited water access. I put a skirt. And that skirt's rolled up when I leave. Go to the next picture. Johnny, he's my dozer guy. We've built over the years, I think I've got 48 dugouts now on the various ponds. He'll dig them, and yeah, this is 1 inch rain coming up. It took about 4 rains to get that thing all the way up. It's never been dry since. Go ahead. This is a pond that allowed cattle access to it. This is Marshall's pond. And Marshall, I asked Marshall, how long did it take you to build that? Because he used a horse. And one of those slip scrapers, you all ever seen them? Yep. I said, Marshall, how long did it take you to build that pond? Oh, Greg, he said, we didn't keep track of time in those days. We just kept going till it was done. But anyway, that's what happened. It had about 8 inches of water and 7 foot of mud. There I am paying to get it dug out, okay? That's what happens with livestock. They drag mud into your dugout. So don't let that happen. This is a $1,000 pond. The landowner, I got a free lease on this 100 acres. He gave it to me, free. He's a hunter. And my farm bordered him, and I said, you don't have any water. Yeah, I know, I'd love you to graze it, but I don't have any water. I said, how about I dig you a pond? So that pond's 12 foot deep. In the middle. It's not very big, but we did this step next. I put a rock skirt on it. So when the cattle go down to drink, they've got to stand on that rock. And that rock's got 12 to 14 inch stones underneath that 2 inch as a base. And so my wire goes around the pond and out in the water just a little tiny bit where they can reach under it. There's a stake right there. So they can reach out and get them a drink. If there's no water, I'll build a pond, or I may drill a well. A lot of our properties have this rural water. It's pressurized water you got to pay for. And we're very fortunate we're on Public Water District 10. So far, they've been bumping it up a little bit. Right now I can water 300 head for a month. It's going to cost me about 80 bucks. I can do that. I can't do 500, but I can do 80. Okay? The last option is to haul water. Okay, this is a farm we leased in 2001. It's owned by Jack. And this has a special meaning to me because Jack died last year. On his deathbed, his hospice was there. He pulled his daughter over, whispered in her ear, said, "Daughter, I want to make sure that you call Greg and tell him I died. But also I want to make sure that Greg and Jan have the first chance to buy that farm." He didn't want to see it growing houses. And he sold it to us, or she did, the daughter did. And we sealed that pond with cattle. Jack had built that pond. It never held water. It just drained out. So I asked him, I said, "Would you mind if I put cattle on the face of that dam?" He says, "Greg, it won't hold water. It's not going to hurt anything." So we brought in those big Charolais cows, and we fed hay on that for 2 weeks on the face of that dam. And then the spring rains came that next spring, filled it up. It's never leaked since. So cows can seal a dam if it's low enough. You got to get that level down low enough and bring in hay. You got to have that trampling, a lot of trampling. That's a $10,000 dam. And Jack didn't have a place to fish. That's what he built it for, was fishing. That's Ian's ranch in Africa. You got 4,000 head busting off that bank, getting them a drink. And he's got a wire back in that brush where those cows can't go up that bank. So they're only watering from this side all the way through his farm. When he gets to the end of his 14,000 acres, he turns around and comes back up the river on the opposite side.
Wait.
Somebody say something?
I said wait.
Oh, you said, oh. She's good. She's good. Wait. Winter water siphon. So the hose there on the left, the green one, I'm not going to move it. I'm just going to point. That is my siphon. So we pull the siphon on that. This is our supply. It's coming in from a hydrant. And when cattle are not drinking, there's still flow coming through those pipes. It cannot freeze down to 20 below. I've never been to 40 below, but I've done 20 below and it did not freeze. Okay? That's the landowner's yard. We do graze landowners' yards now. And I love this because it freaks out all my neighbors. They absolutely freak out. They'll go by, and this is a pretty place. But the landlord said, "I don't want those cows in my pond." I'm like, "They won't be." So we have the water piped up in his driveway, and I tell them, they called my landlord and said, "You know Judy's got cows in your yard?" Because the guy lives in Texas. He goes, "Yeah, he told me he's going to mow it and he's going to fertilize it at the same time." And that's what that was. So the cows made a muck of that. This is before we put a tire tank in here. They really, in a rainstorm, they'll tear up a dugout pretty good just getting down to it. They're dragging their udders. I hate to see cows drag udders to get down to the pond. And folks, we lost a bull calf. He wasn't a calf. He was a 400-pound calf. He got down in that pond, and he got his feet stuck, and we came to move him that morning. I'm like, "What is that in the water?" And he said, "Oh." He'd got his nose down in that water. He couldn't pull up, and it drowned. Yeah, 450-pound beautiful bull. I lost $4,300 that morning. He was the potential herd sire. So it doesn't take much rock to start paying for some of that. You can go to the next one. We've already seen that. Yeah, so I do run a predator right here over my hose. If I don't, there's the hydrant. I've got a hose, a hot wire, right over the top of that tank. If I don't, those cows are going to monkey with that hose, maybe step on it and break it, or they might pull my hose out of that tank. And if they do, I do have a steel weight on the end of it. But if this hose comes out of the tank, that's my siphon, it all freezes. Because now there's not something pulling water out of that tank. It will freeze rock solid and you'll crack your hydrant. Okay? That's our flood crossings that we put in. Okay, next picture. So when it rains, it actually comes up on top of the creek. And when the water level comes back down, it comes back down. So we don't have to deal with water gaps anymore. Okay? Well, we already covered that. Go on. So portable water. I challenged Dan at Dawson Creek. I said, Dan, you've got this nice water points out here. You've already got a stem where you can hook on. I said, get you a 50 or 100 foot hose and run that hose out into the center of your paddock instead of keeping all your water against the fence line. Because you're moving that manure. You're moving that manure around your farm. Portable is huge. Dan had a 200-gallon tank out there. And in a really hot summer day, he probably needs that. But in the springtime, they weren't drinking that much water. You could get by with a 100-gallon tank. It's a lot easier to dump. So we have one tank for our whole farm, and that's it. We just move the tank around the farm, okay? That's the spring tank. It's not hot yet. We dropped down to a 40-gallon. That's watering 350 animals. But it's pressurized. It's 60 PSI. So the minute they drink on it, it's boiling water into the bottom of that tub. What are these things on the ground? What's that all about?
Stops them punching it out around the trough while they're drinking, right?
Exactly. That's the side walls out of an earth-moving tire. Bill Hansen saw that, and he's like, gosh darn, I'm going to do that. Because he'd gotten some rain up, and his cows were pugging. Anywhere he put his tank, they were pugging it. Here's what cattle do. They go up to the tank, they stick their head in it, they get them a drink, and they look around. They do. They look around, and there's the water going out on the ground. Well, if you got 300 animals drinking 2 to 3 times a day, all you got's a mud pit. Folks, if they can stand on that rubber mat, it's the difference in night and day. So why do you want to turn a nice piece of sod into a mud pit? You don't need to do that. I have a little trailer. I just dump it in. It goes on my 4-wheeler, and I haul it to the next spot. I'm not real crazy about those. I've got some of them, and the cattle fight. They fight. You know why? There's not enough water there. I mean, this one on the left only holds 10 gallons. It's pressurized, but it doesn't have enough capacity. I spent a lot of money on that. I would sell it to anybody in that wants it. You got to pay the shipping. All right? There's the chlorine tablet. So it's 1 ounce per 400 gallons. So if you've got a 100-gallon tank, you'd take a screwdriver, bust that into 4 pieces. Here's the apparatus we put it in right here. So the top one is my bobber. Think of fishing, you need a bobber. That floats on top of the tank. The middle one is a Gatorade bottle that I put my pill in, put the lid back on it, and then I take a pocket knife, cut 4 or 5 holes in it, and then I put a brick on the bottom. If you don't put that brick on the bottom, the cows will get their tongue on that and they'll pull it out of the tank. Just playing with it. Okay, next picture. There it is, installed. So the brick is on the bottom. There's my hypochlorite, and there's my bobber. Every bit of water is coming in that float, is coming around that. And folks, people say, but Greg, you're putting chlorine in the tank. Folks, you can take that water and taste it. You can smell it. You can't detect chlorine in that water. I mean, it's only 1 ounce per 400 gallon. And that tablet is going to last you probably 7 days. You can find that in Walmart at the swimming pool section.
So I bought a couple of those little water buddies.
Yep.
Really love them.
Yep.
And it's a smaller tank than that. So can I still do that?
Yeah, just use a smaller piece. If you got a 50-gallon tank, how much is holding in those water buggies?
I just got it. So I
Yeah.
really got it wrong.
Well, if it's not 400 gallons, don't put a full tablet in there. That's what I'm telling you.
And I can just hide it underneath the battery box in there, and then they can't get at it.
Yep. It makes a big difference. Mark Bader's the one that turned me on to this. I didn't know it. He was on our farm doing a farm tour. I was gone. He said, Greg, your water stinks. Your cows are licking at your water. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's coming off that pond. And my pipe was up into the center of the pond. Folks, when you put a pipe in a pond or a dugout, you don't want the pipe on the very bottom of the pond. Your oxygen level is higher in the top 3 to 4 foot of that water because of sunlight. Oxygen. Cattle need oxygen. And they'll drink your water better if it's got oxygen in it. He said, they're licking at your tank. And he said, I just felt the side of your tank and it's slime. It had a slime growing on it. Once we put that in there, done.
So 1 tablet for how many?
400 gallons.
Is that the sodium or calcium?
It's a hypochlorite. That's what it's called. I don't know about the sodium. They call it hypochlorite is on the bottle. You can buy, there's 100 tablets in there. It's like $15. Those tablets will probably last you the rest of your life. That's a 5-gallon bucket. We just cut holes in. When we cut the ice off our tanks in the morning, we're not Alberta, okay? We did have about 10 days where it was, 12 to 15 below. I was scared my tank was going to freeze solid, but it didn't. Because that tank's mounted on the ground and the ground temperature kept it from freezing. But that's how we dip the ice off. Go ahead. So that's the bottom of a tire tank. That's the inlet here on the left. That's my drain on the other side. Go on. So we use earth-moving tires. We can get those almost free. They charge us $10 to load one onto your trailer. And these are actually brand new ones. They'd never been mounted on anything. They were from China. A rock quarry bought those close to us, and they found out there's no steel. There's no steel in the sidewall. Well, guess what? When you pick up weight, they go right to the rim. And they had 150 of them. $10 loading fee. They make a really good tire. And I cut that sidewall out with a sheetrock knife. I didn't have to deal with the metal, which is quite a deal cutting sidewall out if it's got metal in it. But put geotextile down with rock. That just keeps the cows elevated. Stockpile sheep grazing, we don't give them any water. Sheep will not drink water in the wintertime as long as they're grazing. You put them up in a dry lot and you feed them hay, they're going to have a little bit of water, but they won't drink water when they're out in the pasture. Winter pig water, we just filled up a tank, and at night we dumped it, so there was nothing out there to freeze. Pressurized water drinkers. Now in the summertime we had a 2-hole drinker for the pigs, and everything there is steel or wood. Pigs are destructive. They can tear up and chew through anything. Plastic around a hog. Okay? Chickens, we had a 10-gallon gravity water reservoir. That's the water. It's just all gravity fed. I love these. These are plastic quick couplers. Folks, you can put a water point out on your farm for $20. That's what that costs. A hydrant is $160 for a good one. Now, I'm not sure how you're going to plug that in up here in the wintertime. You got to go pretty deep, but it's a great summer water system for you. Yep. It is high-density polyethylene. It can freeze and it won't crack. If it's got PVC in it, forget about it. It's going to crack it. I like these. This is what Dan had on his farm at Dawson Creek. He's using a Gallagher, and it's a full float. So as soon as they drink, it opens up, and it can take quite a bit of debris coming out of that dugout. A little bit of moss or a snail, it can take it. Some of these others, it's got the little bitty orifice on them, they'll clog up on you. I love that valve. But folks, you cannot use that valve on a gravity system. It's got to be pressurized. It's called the Job Megaflow. You can get those through Powerflex Fence, Kinco. There's probably people up here that sell fencing companies. Amazon. Yeah, they're a good one. They're not cheap, but they're good. High-tensile fence, that's what we use, 12 gauge. I tell people it's a mental fence, it's not physical. But make sure it's hot. Otherwise your animals will get where they don't respect the wire. That's a brand new farm. That's our spacing. 7-inch, 13, 19, 29, and 41. I don't like a high fence because my deer they'll get tangled in it and you'll find them dead where that back leg got through that wire. Put 16 inches in the ground. There's the chickens. There's the dog. So the dog kept the aerial predators from killing the chickens. If a possum or a coon would happen to get through that netting, that's a dead coon. That dog's going to kill him. There's a temporary paddock. So when I set out a paddock, folks, I don't touch anything. So this holds the reel, but now I've got a new one. The reel is actually up here on my handle, right off of there. And so my reel's being run out and my posts are back here. I'm just throwing them off like lawn darts, and you can step it in, put it on, move forward. With temporary fencing like this, your cows, you can go 45 to 50 feet between posts. Sheep, you need to keep that distance a lot shorter, like 12 to 16 feet. So we grazed that off and we came in behind it and we unroll hay. That's our process as long as the ground is clean. What that does is it stretches out our winter stockpile. If we don't get any rain from August, September, October, we're not going to grow but about this much. That's about it. If we get rain, we're going to have it like that, okay? So in a short stockpile year, we'll buy hay and bring it in. And you're bringing in nutrients, you're unrolling it out there on the landscape. There it is. There's our new configuration. So this allows us to run over the fence while we're riding the four-wheeler. So we don't have to get off. We don't hardly have any gates anymore. And of course, this holds the reel up there. No steel post. I don't like steel posts. It's just the ground. If a deer runs into it, knocks my insulator off, now I'm looking for my fence. Where's it shorted out? Use a good charger. Lightning arrestor. Fiberglass posts, you don't need to use insulators. On my perimeter, I like to use 4 to 5 wires. It just makes me sleep better at night. I know people, I've been down Interstate 70 and there's somebody's got cows out there who's got 1 wire up. I'm like, oh my gosh. If a deer runs through that and knocks that on the ground, you're liable. Well, in Missouri you are. In Nebraska, if you hit a cow, it's your fault. Yep, that's open range. But in Missouri, you're going to pay for that person's vehicle, or if they get hurt. Single wire paddock divisions, just 1 wire. I don't put up 2. That's a perimeter fence for sheep. A good charger. They don't make Stafix anymore. Speedrite, Cyclops, those are my 2 top chargers. Speedrite makes a really good product. Gallagher makes a good one. 3 foot of ground rod per joule. So if you have a 30 joule charger, you're going to need 90 feet of ground rods in the ground to get a really good ground. And where you get in trouble is if you get a lot of snow or if it gets really dry. Your ground rods are not working correctly. Most of your failure rates on electric fences, if you talk to a fencing dealership, they're going to say it's the grounds. They usually trace it back to your ground. You've got a bad clamp, or something's wrong with your grounds. I like those. The landowners like those because they can see them. But if a cow runs through them, you got a 40-foot gate. So in that respect, I don't like them. Keep going. That's in New Zealand, the Kiwi Tech folks. That morning I went with him. We never got off the four-wheeler for 4 hours. And we moved 100 different groups of animals. And never got off the four-wheeler. But he's got a servo motor on there. It's rolling up his wire for him. He's got a little deal here on the side that picks the reel up the post. He never gets off the four-wheeler. Yeah, I mean, those guys are nuts. Keep going. They really are. There's one of our poly gaps for our sheep. Building a corner, we use all fiberglass corner posts, the big ones. We can get those in the United States, or I can. Fiberglass is best. I'll use a wood post or a steel, but you got to use really good insulators. There's a good corner. Those are all fiberglass. So everybody said, but high tensile, what's the cost of it? If you ever build a good high tensile fence versus barbed wire, I don't think you'll ever go back to barbed wire. It's cheaper, it's easier to put up, and animals do respect it if you have a good charging system. That's a timeless fence post. We like those because they're pre-drilled. You don't have to paint them. They're pre-sharpened, and they got a 20-year warranty on them. They're a little pricier, but you don't have to do anything with them. We have a lot of lease farms. We got to catch animals, and so I'm not going to build a corral on every farm. I'll just take some cattle panels backed up by some 2x6s. You got to have a way to catch them, or you don't have any way to sell them. That's all it is. Is post spacing is 8 feet and a cattle panel. Pigs are broken inside the cow corrals with hot wire before we turn them out. That's Ian's corral in Africa. You can tell they build everything bigger and better in Africa. And this is in Mexico. That's a 7-foot rock wall. And it's 3 foot wide. It was built by the Taramai Indians. And what's cool, folks, is there'll be a little rock in there. And you're like, what will happen if I pull that rock out? You can't get it out. All that weight of that wall is sitting on that rock. I think that's it. And I think I hit it pretty close to, yeah. And I'll let Steve take over from here. Any questions on what we covered this last talk?
You'll be around.
Yeah, there's the boss right there. You heard her. I'll be around. Thank you all.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm just going to, before lunch, lunch is ready, I'm just going to kind of tell you what's going to go on for the rest of the afternoon. Right after lunch, we were going to go to the pasture, but it's a little wet out there, if anybody's noticed. So I quickly built a bit of a presentation. We'll go through the details when it's nice and warm inside. Then we'll go out to the pasture. It's about 5 miles away from here. Once you get there, if you're driving a car, don't leave the gravel. If you've got a 4x4 or an SUV, you can come into the pasture and park. The moisture is a blessing. I'm not going to complain, but yeah, about a week ago we could have all driven away.